Hey everybody! I'm not going to do the entire video in this mask, but I just wanted to show it off because it's really cool. This was my birthday present from my husband. My birthday was yesterday, June 8th. And we got this at Alabama Phoenix Festival from a crafter who is the Silver Cicada. So, check out her website. It's really cool. She had some amazing masks. She had like a really cool Anubis one and a whole bunch of cheaper fox ones that had this cool stitching across them. So check out the Silver Cicada because she's a really cool crafter. And Alabama Phoenix Festival, if you live in Alabama and you're looking for a new con that's just starting up to get in on, this con is great for indie authors. I met a lot of really cool people, and I even, bought a graphic novel, and my husband bought a short story collection while we were there. And we're going to be there next year with Matter Deep Publishing. Okay, so what I have to bring you today is an awesome announcement. I have the first episode and ode, or first ode and episode in that order, the poem and then the chapter, that goes with Olympia Heights, The Way of the World, and I'm going to read them to you today. Well, there is a PDF of this excerpt available through, there'll be a link in the info of this video, or if you're seeing this video on my blog or Facebook, then it should be in the blog post linked. Or the Facebook, I'll put it in the comments. It'll be there. You'll find it. There's a link to the PDF. You can just download the PDF if you don't want to hear me yammering on. Before I get started, as for release dates, if you're an independent author, you may know this already. It's not really possible to have a hard release date as an independent author. Big publishers work with Amazon and they can set up their book 5 months in advance with the release date on Amazon.com and you can pre-order it. That's not really possible for Kindle and CreateSpace, and I hope that's a feature that they'll eventually have. Expect 7 to 14 days. It will be, I am determined to get it by June 20th because I promised you guys spring, and spring ends June 20th, or 21st, I don't know, it's one of those days. Just to let you know, there is the F-bomb in this chapter. I'm allowing myself to use it once over the entire series, and it's here, and I think you'll agree when you hear it that, if that slipped out of someone's mouth at that moment, you might forgive them a little. So, here we go. So without further ado, here is the opening excerpt of Olympia Heights Book 2, The Weight of the World. The young have exalted notions because they have not been humbled by life or learned its necessary limitations. Moreover, their hopeful disposition makes them think themselves equal to great things, and that means having exalted notions. They would always rather do noble deeds than useful ones. Their lives are regulated more by moral feeling than by reasoning. All their mistakes are in the direction of doing things excessively and vehemently. They overdo everything, they love too much, hate too much, and the same with everything else. Aristotle. Ode 1. We are twice armed if we fight with faith. Plato. The stranger awoke as the moon took its place and stole her host's infant from his bassinet. She took off her cloak, rested it by the fire, and then set to work. She fed the infant 3 drops of ambrosia. She stripped off the swaddling cloth around him, and then to cure him of his mortality, she held him in fire. The baby cooed and giggled as he was cured, but when a curious servant rose from bed, she saw the stranger cooking the child and screamed, waking the whole house. The mother ran in and snatched the child away, but in her haste the boy fell upon the ground. So Demeter cast off her mortal disguise and stood before them. I would have given your son a mortal life and made him a hero as strong as Ares, but your faith was cut short by a servant's screams. He will stay mortal. And thus Demeter left from the mortal's home and went out into the cold, blue, moonlit night. She continued her search for her own daughter, the one Hades took away. Episode 1. How easily some light report is set about, but how difficult to bear. Hesiod. Dr. Celine Davis's 7th period junior chemistry class had 1 minute left to stress over their finals before freedom was theirs. Summer was about to start in the Miami suburb. Since their showdown with the brothers Epimetheus and Prometheus, a lot had changed for Celine. A lot had changed for everyone. Celine and Penny got a hefty insurance check from the fire and had purchased anew all of the physical things in their lives. Celine's friends from grad school had even started a Facebook event to collect prints of old photos, specifically her wedding photos. Other heirlooms and mementos could never be replaced. Still, Celine knew that quilts and photo albums and old sweaters were only things. The memories were still with her. Celine and Penny were able to appreciate what they were left with, each other, and move on. They were now renting a small home a few blocks away from their old apartment. It was too far for Penny to walk to school anymore. There were new challenges for the reborn gods. They all had secrets to keep. Meetings happened once a week under the guise of a support group for the victims of the Alvarez brothers. The Pantheon had become a close-knit social group that worked together to test the limits of their powers and share their more vivid memories. Friends and rivals, they flipped between cracking jokes and arguing from one moment to the next. Celine had the responsibility as acting as the mother of the group. This burden was eased by the tone of things around her. The world in general seemed brighter than before. The Pantheon had come to the conclusion that hope had been let out of Pandora's Pythos when Zack had broken it and freed his comrades. The news media had come to the consensus that the upturn of goodwill and positive mental health was linked to the signs of recovery for the American economy. Magic or money, Celine didn't question it. The school board had voted a week ago to lift freezes on teacher salaries. Celine was due for a raise and a fair amount of retro pay. The last few weeks of class had been relatively peaceful. Celine had gotten her room ready for break by making anyone who chatted during the review sort and scrub the chemical cabinets. She was excited to begin her summer vacation. She was certain that she wasn't alone in this sentiment. Celine put down her magazine, finishing an article about last week's quake in Morocco that cracked the top of Mount Toubkal. It was far less depressing than reading nihilistic predictions about the economy. She watched the minute hand as it slid onto the 4. Celine heard a steady thumping, like a tattoo of a drum beat, deep in her head. It was soft and distant and faster than a heartbeat. At first she thought the noise was coming from somewhere in the room, but when she pressed her middle fingers against her ears, she still heard it. Maybe a migraine was coming on. Bell rings in 60 seconds, she warned. Put your blue books on the pile on the left. Exams go to your right. Chairs frantically scraped as students rushed to ditch their exams at the front and flee the room. Zach Jacobs was already talking about summer football camp with Frank Guerrero as they left the class. Devin Valentine's bracelets jangled as she casually tossed her test on the desk. Celine reached out and touched her hand. Something seemed different. The drum beat was louder. It was coming from Devin, and the teenage girl looked different, like her skin was subtly glowing. "Miss Valentine," she said, "can I talk to you after class?" The bell rang. Devin stared back at Celine for a moment before nodding. Private conversations these days usually meant Pantheon secrets. Minnie Rutherford and June Harold looked back at Devin and Celine expectantly, but Celine waved for them to go on. Celine fixed her eyes on the teenage girl, wondering. She knew something that she had no way of knowing. She felt certain of it. Devin stared back with seafoam green eyes. She knew nothing. "You're 17, Devin?" She nodded. 18 next February, she added. Kids were ever rushing to grow up. 14th? Celine took a wild guess. 13th. And Frank? He was 18 in March. And what was the date for the start of your last period? Devin blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your period." Celine kept her tone soft and maternal. Devin paused to think about it. It was hard to worry about things like menstrual cycles when you were the teenage reincarnation of Aphrodite. Budding superpowers and lucid dreams had taken priority in her thoughts. She tried to think of the last time she had been inconvenienced by Eve's curse. Her stomach twisted. Easter. 6 weeks? You're pregnant. Celine was sure of it. They stared at each other for a long minute. Devin kept praying that her teacher and fellow goddess would suddenly laugh and scream, "Gotcha!" But she knew that wasn't Dr. Davis's style. She was serious, and Devin knew she was right. "Do you want to talk about it?" Celine asked. "How would you even know that?" Celine pondered this. She just knew. "I don't know. Is it that strange, considering—" "I have to go," Devin blurted in a voice that was high and oddly tight. She was out the door in a flash. She strolled down the hall, overcome with a sudden numbness. The excited chatter in the halls muffled to an inaudible murmur in her mind. What would her parents say? She would have liked to blame her next reaction on hormones, but that was only part of it. She coolly walked into the bathroom, locked the stall door behind her, and pressed her forehead to the vandalized wall. "Fuck!" she shouted, bursting into a fit of sobs. She was 17, minutes away from being a senior. She was passing her classes. She was popular. Her mother was running for mayor. Everything was ruined. The worst had happened, and now Devin Valentine was going to be fat. Celine Davis didn't follow Devin to the bathroom. She knew the girl needed space. Devin knew who to call when she was ready to talk. Celine threw her keys and her bottled water into her oversized purse. She didn't stop to bid a summer farewell to anyone else in the science corridor. When her feet rested, Celine was at the nurse's office, at the desk of Dr. Jason Livingstone. "Celine," Jason said, surprised to see her at his door. Dr. Davis and Dr. Livingstone had avoided any public conversation since the Titan attack in February. Louis Mercer had spun the plausible tale of an affair as a cover-up for the Pantheon connection. It was a necessary lie, but neither adult wanted to further perpetuate the rumor by being seen together. Celine was surprised to find Penny sitting in the chair across from the desk. I was just recruiting Penny to babysit this summer so I could get out once in a while, have some sanity. Is that okay with you if I pay her? Penny's old enough to have a little income and a little responsibility, she said. Normally, she might have been a bit more enthusiastic about the idea of her 15-year-old daughter having her own income. She wouldn't need an allowance anymore. Okay, Penny said. I promised Peter I'd see him before I left. Wait for me in the car, Celine said. Penny slipped out of the room like a shadow. Everything okay? Jason asked. Celine closed the office door. Devon's pregnant. Jason took a moment to speak. Frank? It was an easy enough assumption. The pair had been practically joined at the hip since February. She nodded. And a good thing, or we'd have to worry about protecting some poor, stupid boy. This isn't good, he said. She's just a teenager. That's the least of our problems. She's not just a teenager. Celine nodded. I know, but she's a teenager first. No, I mean, yes, it's terrible. She's very young, she's scared, but Celine, we don't know if this baby will even be human. Celine hadn't thought of that. If she goes to see an obstetrician, you could all be outed. And what if it has Frank's strength? Could she even carry it to full term? This is a disaster. Well, it's fortunate the Pantheon has its own MD, she said. Retired. You still have your license. Jason picked up his now cold black coffee and went to the sink to dump it. He took his time rinsing his hand-painted World's Best Dad mug before answering. I'll email her. We'll have to be smart, though. She'll need to use out-of-town pharmacies, or they'll ask why the school nurse is prescribing prenatal vitamins. Thanks, Jason. Celine turned to leave, but stopped. Oh, by the way, it might be worth noting that Devon didn't tell me. You mean she doesn't know you know? No, like, I think she was glowing, but only I could see it. And I heard a heartbeat, a small, fast one. Jason cocked his head. Like a baby's heartbeat? Celine nodded. Keep me updated on that, he said. Will do. Penny was standing under the covered walkway in front of the school. Peter Hadley was leaning against the pillar dressed in far too much black for a summer day and sharing a box of candy with her. He was sporting one of his usual bruises, this one on his chin. Even so, he was looking more cheerful than usual. Celine ignored a sharp glare from Candace Matthews as she passed the front office. The other teacher had been cold towards Celine since Lewis's rumor had struck in February. She pushed open the green glass door of the lobby and spotted Penny chatting enthusiastically to her sullen friend. Hello, Peter, Celine said. She didn't like the boy, but she wasn't rude. He was a Pantheon member after all, even if he had stolen her daughter in a past life. Excited for summer? He shrugged. Mom, Peter has a job. Oh, something fun? Retail, he grumbled. Good. Everyone needs to work in retail or fast food once in their life. Peter didn't look so sure of that. Well, Celine said, eager to eat and get Penny away from Peter. If they both had jobs, maybe they wouldn't have so much time to spend together. Lunch! Right. Bye, Peter. Penny hugged him. He looked unsure of what to do with his hands. Penny practically skipped to her mother's car. She rolled down her window to cool off the interior when Celine started the car. What did you talk to Doc Livingstone about? She asked. I'll tell you in a minute when we pull out of the parking lot, Celine answered. At least, she thought, Devon wasn't her daughter. So, like I said, 1 to 2 weeks for the actual release of Olympia Heights, The Way of the World. I hope that on my Twitter and my Facebook I should be able to give you a couple days' notice about the book's release, so you'll be ready for it. And I think it's actually facebook.com/Olympia Heights. You should go like it so you can get Olympia Heights updates. And I promise, I only update like once every week or 2 weeks or sometimes month, so I'm not going to flood your Facebook feed with annoying, pointless stuff.